You are listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 352.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. Welcome to June. So excited, as always, to be here. I always say that, but I really mean it because you guys are so great to listen to this show regularly. Many of you I talk to about your cookbook publishing projects, and you share this podcast with your friends, neighbors, have them subscribe, and I am excited to be here. I think it's great fun. I'm so proud of myself for continuing through 352 episodes. I've been recording this podcast since September of 2018. An incredible feat, sort of like writing a blog. This is a continual, ongoing project for me. I talk a lot with my students about these kinds of things and the consistency that we build, the trust in ourselves. It's important to do things like this. And it's been a great joy to offer this podcast to you and share information and love for cookbooks with you. So before we dive into the interview today, I do want to remind you that the doors close this Saturday, June 7th for the summer cohort of Get Paid to Get Published. Get Paid to Get Published is my flagship group coaching program for aspiring cookbook writers who want to get paid to write a cookbook without spending their own money to get published. This is different from Cookbooks on KDP, where I teach people how to publish their recipes and stories in a book on Amazon. In Get Paid to Get Published, we actually work on building your platform, creating your concept, writing a cookbook proposal, and pitching that to an agent or a publisher. I have had on the podcast graduates of my Get Paid to Get Published program and my group coaching programs and masterminds, including two recently, Sapno Punjabi with Dal Chawal and Jan Brandenburg with the Modern Mountain Cookbook. And today's guest is actually currently in my group coaching program, but her book designer and herself are also graduates of Cookbooks on KDP. So the book that we're featuring today and the story of the cookbook writer we're featuring today, Kasey Lobb, is actually someone who I'm actively working with and who has already published one cookbook that we're going to talk about. I'm thrilled to bring this conversation with you with Kasey, a self-professed food nerd, registered dietitian, nutritionist, plant-based chef. Kasey is the author of the Gluten-Free Sourdough Cookbook, a flavorful new release that brings together her personal passion and professional expertise. Her new book marks a stirring new chapter for Kasey's personal and professional journey. And most days you'll find her experimenting in the kitchen, tending to her mother, her well-loved gluten-free sourdough starter. For over 20 years, Kasey has helped her clients transform their health through food with a focus on food sensitivities and autoimmune conditions. With this cookbook, she is on a mission to help home bakers ditch dry, dense, gluten-free breads and bake with confidence using accessible, nourishing ingredients the whole family will love. Again, as I mentioned, Kasey and her book designer, Ray, are both graduates of my Cookbooks on KDP program. She is currently going through the curriculum for Get Paid to Get Published, and it's been a joy to watch this cookbook come to life, and I know there are other cookbooks on the horizon for Kasey as well. So if you want to join the summer cohort of Get Paid to Get Published, you can head to www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/accelerator, and the link is also below in the show notes. Without further delay, let's dive into this interview all about the Gluten-Free Sourdough Cookbook with Kasey Lobb. Hi, Kasey. Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast.
Hey, Maggie.
It's great to
Thanks for
have you
having me.
here. You're welcome. I'm excited that you're here. We're going to talk all about your beautiful new book, the Gluten-Free Sourdough Cookbook. But before we get started, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is Kasey Lobb, and I'm a dietitian, a registered dietitian nutritionist by training. I also am a plant-based chef, and I had a previous life of 20 something years of doing clinical and owning my own private practice in a medical clinic. And I decided to shift gears a couple years ago and see if I could write a cookbook or two or three.
And here we are. Let's talk
Yeah,
about your former life for a minute, your previous life. 20 years running a private nutrition practice.
that sounds like a long time, Maggie.
I know, it does sound like a long time. And I think that's an amazing thing. I bet you helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people with their nutrition and their eating and their, if they're managing a chronic disease.
Yeah, it's been my life work.
Yeah.
I had a period of time where I struggled with chronic inflammation, and I think that builds compassion and empathy in what you do as a practitioner. And so I tailored my practice over time to help with inflammatory conditions, and grew as functional medicine grew. I learned more about that, and just as it developed, I started dealing more and more with food sensitivities. So that has become my niche, is helping people with food sensitivities, and helping them modify recipes and modify their menus to accommodate things that they don't tolerate.
Yeah. Tell me about the people that you worked with in your private practice that always achieved the best success in the work that you did with them. I'm always kind of curious about the kind of people that were willing to make, what we eat is so personal and it affects so many parts of our life, but to overcome chronic inflammation and to overcome food sensitivities, people that are able to do this, what did you see in these people?
Um, so I found people have the most success when you meet them where they are. Um, and I find that even like with my cooking classes today, you meet them exactly on the page, what they can do today,
Mhm.
and they need to start seeing successes,
Yeah.
because there's nothing like success or progress that motivates, and that creates more change and better habits. But I found that the way that I was taught 20 something, 30 years ago, is you present the diet information, and this is the goal that they need to have, and so start eating that tomorrow.
Yeah.
I quickly found in my private practice that it didn't work. It didn't create change. So dialing that back and making change manageable, um, is the way that you can actually do it day to day, and then you build on that.
Yeah. And your experience with meeting people where they are and making changes that created habits, I would have to think that that really benefited you then when you made the shift to recipe development, cookbook writing, teaching classes in your own life, because you then had to make changes in the way that you maybe operated, not, running a private practice anymore, but now all of a sudden, doing things on your own.
Yeah. Well, doing things on my own was entirely a different animal,
Yeah.
because I was used to working with the team. And that is when, um, by grace and luck, I found you, Maggie.
Yeah.
I found that I needed somebody to coach me through how to do cookbook, how to do this new portion of my career, and how to use everything that I've learned, I've experienced, my expertise, and how to use the best of that to help people.
Yeah.
And
Because not only have you um, counseled and coached people through these things, but like you said, you faced it yourself. So people like you that have been through it and have helped other people have success are dietitians that need to be writing books for the public and promoting being a dietitian and getting books out there that are written by dietitians, because it matters and it makes a lot of difference. So what I'd love to talk about is let's talk a little bit about your business and the work that you do and the passions that you have related to your business, because it's not all just cooking. I know you also like to travel.
Yes, do like to travel. And I'm allergic to milk, and then I also don't do well with gluten. And so everything I do is avoiding gluten and dairy. I found that even in my private practice for the last 8 to 10 years, those are the most common inflammatory proteins and particles that are in our food, and that I usually got the most improvement by doing and eliminating those, or having people, trial. And I usually talk about it as like taking a gluten holiday or doing experiments and seeing if you can get some uh, what we call decreasing the inflammation that's coming out of your bucket, so to speak. Which is, your bucket is how much you can tolerate of inflammatory um, chemicals and proteins that you're taking in. So I travel a lot. I'm going to Spain this October, and part of that is finding people who can help accommodate the gluten and dairy um, allergies, and that's been fun. And I look forward to see what's going to happen in the practice. Um, and my husband's retiring, and so he's going to hopefully start helping.
Yeah.
And we're going to be expanding that area of appetite to travel. That's going to be exciting.
Yeah, because I would think that people that have intolerances and sensitivities might be afraid to travel because of the food situation.
Absolutely. And options right now that are, I would say, considered safe. And I know this from my private practice, just counseling people. There are some cruises that are great. There's some camps in America. And then there's some apps and things that you can find, but there's nothing really easy yet. And so my whole aim has always been to help make things easier. The cookbook that I just wrote, I needed that 10 years ago.
Yes, you wrote the book you wish you had at the time when you didn't have it.
Yeah.
Couldn't find the book that you needed. And I think it's wonderful when people can write books like that, because let's talk a little bit about your journey and what book you wish you had, and then the book that you actually have ended up publishing here recently.
Yeah. So I needed a guide to doing gluten-free, and like the gluten-free foods that you can buy, but that are not very good.
Yeah.
So basically, I've identified some stages of change to go gluten-free. And one of those first stages is I want what I want. I want what I'm used to, but I need to have it gluten or dairy-free, or I need it anti-inflammatory. And so this, one of the aims of this cookbook, my new cookbook, is to make the breads as tasty as possible. And I found that you can do that by using gluten-free sourdough starter and using that in different products, in different baked goods. And that tremendously improved the results. So they didn't taste bland, and they didn't have like a dry quality that a lot of gluten-free foods have. And they had a better texture, and they were stronger just because I was using the gluten-free sourdough starter.
Yeah.
And so really years of just experimenting, and then a lot of experimenting, like in the last 7 months of writing the cookbook, like dialing up all that and deciding, okay, There's no more playing around with the recipe. I need to nail it down.
Yeah.
But I had wished for something that gave me the product of the way I wanted it to taste, that didn't use anything intimidating, like some flours that were difficult to find, or flours that were rare and expensive. And I also wanted to avoid using a kitchen scale, because I know a lot of baking and more advanced bakers all use kitchen scales. You do things by weight, but that's not how I grew up. I wanted to figure out, can I do this by volume using my measuring cups that I have? So those were a couple of the goals, and I feel like I nailed them for this cookbook.
Yeah, and you happen to teach cooking classes also. Were you finding that the people who came to your classes were also wanting similar things? Because there's no better way to really find out what people want than to teach them how to cook and like hear them talking while they're actually going through the process.
Yeah, my cooking classes have taught me a lot.
Yeah.
My bread class has been the most popular for the last. I'm going into my third year of teaching, and they really taught me some things that I thought were going to be really important. They didn't care. They don't care how much fiber I'm adding to it. They don't care that I'm adding this to make sure the nutrient profile is better. Adds B vitamins or whatever. They wanted to make sure that it's not gummy, and that it actually held together. Can I actually apply butter to it and it not rip up?
Yeah.
And that's what we ended up having. Yeah. Although I have snuck in all the vitamins and fiber, I do that anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about gluten-free sourdough starter, because talk about what a sourdough starter is and what you do to make a gluten-free starter.
Sourdough starter is basically a way of harnessing nature's yeast that's in the air. So instead of using or just only using like dry active yeast, or active dry yeast, or the little blocks of yeast, we have yeast just naturally living in our environment, and you can actually start cultivating that, and it only takes about a week. And it's a process of feeding and discarding, or just feeding and watering, and you can build the natural yeast, and that's what's going to be the leavening, or a big part of the leavening power in your baked goods. But I found that it's not just leavening power that it brings to gluten-free. It's all these other texture and flavor that has really been a game changer for gluten-free products. And then the gluten-free I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
Yeah, that's now the gluten-free starter. And for a normal sourdough starter, like if I was making one that's just in a normal cookbook, I would harness the yeast from the air also. Mm-hmm. But I would use all-purpose flour, correct? And water, and let it sit, and then feed it and throw some away or the discard, and like keep feeding it until it's real bubbly and active, so that I can use that in place of yeast in my bread. But you have to use something in yours instead of all-purpose flour because you need it to be gluten-free. What kinds of things do you substitute for your all-purpose flour in your book to make your starter?
Well, I'm going to tell you my secret. I have found I've used everything. I've used single strains, just like brown rice flour, which is very popular. I've tried just using, buckwheat flour. I've tried all the different flours. And the best, especially for beginners, is a blend. And Bob's Red Mill gluten-free 1-to-1 baking flour has a good blend. And that's what I use to grow and feed my starter. And it just makes a very robust, strong starter. I can't mess it up. I speak of it in terms of like a margin. That Bob's creates a large margin of error. because of its strength and versatility. So Bob's actually ended up, I reached out because they're my preferred anyway. So I reached out to them and they ended up sending me a lot of samples and product that I used in some of the recipe development and my testers used. So every recipe in my book has been tested with the Bob's Red Mill Gluten-Free 1-to-1.
Yeah.
And I've also, you can substitute because I've been doing that. My recipe testers didn't do that, but I've tested the recipes like on my own just by swapping out because like some people, I've had a friend who was trying to avoid tapioca starch, and Bob's has some tapioca starch in it. So we've developed different substitutions and can come up with good products like that.
Yeah. And then
so all the recipes have that margin.
Yeah. And then once you have a starter that's active, or if you have to make your own starter because maybe there's something in the Bob's Red Mill blend that doesn't agree with you, or you can't have it because of a sensitivity, you have a starter then, just like a normal starter in a bakery or in a home kitchen. And you now have all these recipes for things that people can do using this starter. And the neat thing about your book is it's not just bread. I mean, there's a lot of different types of bread, but also you have crepes, sweets like cobbler, chocolate bundt cake. There's snacks, things you do with the discard. So I think what we ought to do is maybe let's just talk a little bit about, so let's start at the very top. Like, people do think about bread, like making bread with a sourdough starter. And I want you to talk about your number one recipe that is like the go-to standard for sandwich bread that you have landed on. And then we'll talk about some of the other fun things that you added to the book.
Yeah, my go-to is the honey sandwich loaf, which I can blame that for this whole project.
Yes.
I've been making that for several years, and I've had so many people tell me, why don't I do something with that recipe? It's not what you think of as traditional sourdough. It's not a boule, it's a loaf. And it's also the recipe that we teach in the my gluten-free sourdough bread class, because we can make and rise and bake the demi loaf, which is like you take the regular bread recipe and cut it in half, and we can have that all completely done in 2 hours.
Yeah, it would be fun to have a cooking class for a 10-hour process of. They'd be with you all day. Maybe they have to spend the night. Right.
Yeah. And to do a full-size loaf is just a little bit longer because depending on conditions, you need to let it rise a little more.
Yeah.
So I've taught, I don't know how many, maybe 15, 20 classes of just that with the half-size loaf. And we're always done in 2 hours, and everybody loves it. And that has been like an ongoing, Kasey, why don't you write more of these? We need more things that are this quality. So that was really good to hear.
So for people that are gluten-free, tell them how this bread is different than what they might find at the supermarket.
Oh, my friends do not know that this is gluten-free bread.
Yeah.
So it looks just like regular bread. It has the texture. It's bendy like regular bread. But without being tough, it's still got a nice tender crumb, and you can get a nice smooth surface on it, which is sometimes kind of an issue. With other breads, you need to knead it.
Yeah.
And you get that nice smooth crumb on it with a smooth top. But with this, with gluten-free breads, you usually don't. In order to get that smooth top on it, you usually use wet fingertips and pat it and make it nice and smooth. And when I do that, nobody knows that it's gluten-free.
Because I guess without the kneading, and because you're not developing gluten, and if you don't pat it with wet fingertips, if it sticks to your fingers or whatever, it might just leave like a lumpy or bumpy look on the surface.
It looks like a rustic loaf.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's great to do that for sandwich bread. You also have quick breads. You have biscuits, cornbread, Irish soda bread, pizza crust, naan. And I think that a lot of times people think, well, how could I possibly make all those things gluten-free as well?
Yeah, the biscuits were one of my longed for item. My husband was like, I just want biscuits and gravy. um, so I have a pretty high standard when it comes to biscuits because I had come from a long line of biscuit lovers. We're here in Texas, and so that's like a staple. So the the biscuits, you do a lot different. You've got to you don't have to worry about the over kneading it or that overdevelopment of gluten. Instead, the thing to focus on is having cold butter and having that butter. When it melts, it creates the airiness in the texture.
Yeah.
Which you do have to do that a little bit in other biscuits, but it's even more important with the gluten free.
Yeah.
And the sourdough offers the moisture and a little bit more of elasticity so you have that margin of error with the biscuit.
Yeah, and you also talk about in the biscuit section, there's a whole page on baking powder.
I know the baking powder. I'd go through a lot of baking powder. I'm surprised. Baking powder is a kind of a powerful secret ingredient in gluten-free baking. And so it's really important to me to make sure I get an aluminum-free version. So I thought, I did food science for a while. I could do this.
Yeah.
Let's make our own baking powder.
Yeah. So it's neat that with cream of tartar, arrowroot cornstarch, or potato starch and baking soda, you can mix up a larger quantity of baking powder, keep it on hand, and then you're not always having to buy it. Like you said, replenish it since you use quite a bit in gluten-free baking, and then you don't have to worry about the aluminum.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a lot of people that are sensitive to corn. So that making your own actually creates more options. And so you know that they're safe for you.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about flatbread. I think the naan looks beautiful, great picture to imagine what it would be, but making gluten-free flatbreads really offers some versatility then.
Yeah, I do the gluten-free, the naan I teach a Mediterranean class, and like we do shawarma, and we go over how to pickle some onions and do all kinds of different versions of vegetables just to increase the vegetables. So sometimes I'll do a 3-hour class and we'll add the naan in, and it's based on it's something that we used to do, and I still need to like research it, but like my grandmother used to do like a hot bread where you add boiling water to make hush puppies.
Yeah.
And so this kind of uses that kind of technique, and I found that it needed it because of the coconut flour. That coconut flour, it's a very moist flour, and you need it needed some something special, and I had to balance that with the how much sourdough starter to use. So because I wanted it to be elastic when you roll it out, and I wanted it to hold together. So
I think the boiling water, the cornbread is called, I think it's called boiling water cornbread. And it somehow gelatinizes or like swells the corn starches a little bit before they're actually mixed into the batter. And it makes like a real creamy kind of almost like a little cooked flavor to the interior of the cornbread. And when we made it, we would make the batter and then it's just like dropped by the spoonful or whatever into, you like pan fry it, and it makes like a thicker little corn cake rather than, think about cornbread like baked in a cake pan or a loaf. It's not like that. It's little individual pieces. So it's neat that you came up with that technique for the coconut flour and to make flatbread. And I think that's one thing that's just great about this book is because you live this, you probably are always thinking, gee, I wish I could have that gluten-free, just like your husband said, I really want biscuits, or you said, I really want flatbread. Talk about the things that you use the discard for. Tell us, first of all, what the discard is and why you want to make things out of it.
Well, the discard is basically, I tell my students, it's like when you take the trash out of your starter, because the yeast are in there, they're living, and they make waste products. And so, you need to clean up things a little. And so taking a discard is basically just removing a portion of the starter. And you can either just throw it away, you could feed it to your chickens, you could add it to your compost, but I think on mine, well, I live in Texas, and so I think it would just draw ants. So I decided every recipe in this book uses discard. So whenever you're caring for your starter, you remove a discard and then you feed it. And feeding just refers to adding a portion of flour, gluten-free flour, and water. And so every recipe in here will use discard in some amount.
Yeah. And so the discard recipes like scones, you have a cinnamon sugar cracker and charcuterie crackers, which is wonderful because people love charcuterie boards. They're very popular. And then not only granola, but granola bars. So a lot of variety in this chapter for ways to use the discard.
Yeah. I learned a lot doing the crackers, like there's cinnamon sugar and then there's the cheddar cracker.
Mm-hmm.
And the cheddar cracker was because I missed Cheez-Its.
Yeah.
When my kids were little, they got to eat Cheez-Its.
Yeah. There's nothing better than Cheez-Its.
I know, they're like addictive.
They're
like
so good. They're so good.
And I mean, I literally haven't had a Cheez-It in maybe 7 years or something, but I can remember what they tasted like.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was fun to keep making those Cheez-Its, or to keep making and modifying to see how can I get that Cheez-It flavor.
And also, they don't take that long to make.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, there was a lot of times where I had you have to get the salt just right. Too much salt, not enough salt. Because the Cheez-Its have that cheesy flavor, but really it's that nice, sharp, salty flavor that's really selling it. And so I tweaked that. And luckily my family calls me a super taster. I can taste things, like the nuances of things, and sometimes pick things out. And so that has really been handy whenever I'm trying to make something taste like something else.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're developing a recipe and you can taste the original and then work on making a recipe to taste like that, it is a skill, and it is not something that everybody can do that well. Some people are just like, yeah, it tastes pretty good to me. And some people are like, oh no, we need to, like you said, increase the salt, decrease the salt, add more of something to make it taste better. And, cookbooks, that's really at the end of the day what they're all about. People want to use the recipes, but they want them to taste good. I always say if you're in the restaurant business, you're really in the flavor business. If you're in the cookbook business, I think you're also in the flavor business. You don't want people to spend time and money to have a result that's, just mediocre. So I think it's really great that you can use that skill that you have for delicious things. And there's also a desserts section. You call it sweets. And a couple of the recipes that stuck out to me, blackberry cobbler, and then also you have a really delicious looking chocolate bundt cake. So did you use starters in those as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Everything has a starter in it to help, again, help with the moisture and help with the texture.
Yeah.
They have different amounts. The starter in the coffee cake was a game changer.
So tell me what you mean by that. Was it a gluten-free coffee cake that you were making without starter?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can make gluten-free coffee cake and it's okay. But once you add the starter, it just takes it to another level. I think because the tangy of the sourdough complements the sweetness of the brown sugar, and it just elevates it. That's a recipe that gets asked for a lot around here.
Yeah.
And my friends. I had a friend ask me for that for her birthday.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's something that sets this cookbook apart then, because it's possible that people might find cookbooks with recipes for gluten-free sweets, crackers, desserts, just like we're talking about. But what you've really pointed out to me today that I guess I didn't even realize in working as your, coach on this book is that the starter itself adds so much to the texture, the flavor, the volume of the finished product that a lot of other gluten-free recipes for baking don't necessarily do.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
What's it like to keep a starter alive?
It's been very easy.
Yeah, good.
That's a huge thing with my classes, and people get really intimidated that they have to babysit it. But I'll give you a couple of hints.
Yes.
I keep mine in the refrigerator, and I walk through it also in the book. I have a refrigerator thermometer. That way I know my refrigerator is the right temperature. Mm-hmm. And then, because the whole purpose of that is we want to be growing yeast. We don't want to grow anything else. We don't want any contamination or bacteria. And keeping proper refrigeration temperature is a big part of that.
And what's the ideal temperature?
You want your refrigerator at like between 38 and 40 degrees. And I have a refrigerator that tells me what temperature it is, but I don't necessarily always believe it. I have a refrigerator thermometer in there just in case.
Yeah.
So, because obviously the sourdough is important to me, the starter is important. I call her affectionately, I call her my mother. And so I have a larger amount, so I keep it in a half gallon, like mason jar. And I only have to feed her like every 2 weeks. So like if I travel and we travel for about a month at a time, I will freeze some in like half pint jars. Mm-hmm. And then I will feed her up, and I will leave her in the back of my refrigerator. And I haven't lost any that way. And I've been gone like 33 days before. But when I got back, I did have to, feed her. I had to discard about half, and I fed her small amounts, and she came back.
Yeah.
And then I also will have like one or two friends, and I will send some over for babysitting. And that way I'm covered. Now, if I had lost any, I can make it in 6 or 7 days. It's a pretty straightforward process. It takes you about 3 minutes a day to make starter from scratch.
Yeah. But you hate to lose it once you've got it going.
And I don't know why. You do. I was in Ireland several years ago, and maybe like 10 or 12 years ago, and it kind of started the whole sourdough thing. I was at a cooking school, and they had their sourdough starter for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And then something like, I guess their walk-in refrigerator or something died or something. And they lost it. So the starter that he was like, this starter is only 7 years old. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, 7 years old? That's old. That's a long time to keep.
Yeah, to him it was a baby though.
Yeah. Yeah. So mine probably is at least 5 or 6, something like that. I haven't been counting.
I love that you had a sourdough babysitter. I never thought about that. People are like pet sitters. They babysit kids, but I never thought about pawning, giving people a portion of your sourdough starter and having them keep it alive while you're on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same kind of thing. You have to kind of tell them, You don't have to feed it every day. Just, in 1 week, I just do these 3 things.
Yes.
And then that's it. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
And I'm gifting you this refrigerator thermometer.
Yes. And I'll bring you some baked goods when you can bake again. Nobody will ever turn that down, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now I can deliver it with a free cookbook, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
So this cookbook, from working with you, I know this, but I want you to tell everybody the story. When you set out to write your first book, this wasn't the book that you thought you were going to write first.
No, I didn't know. This wasn't the book that I felt like was on my heart. But I think in order for me to get where I need to go, this is the book that needed to happen. And
tell everybody a little bit about what you mean by that.
So I come from a long line of bakers and cooks, and I thought I needed to write, and I still do think I need to write a book about Texas cooking, and but through the eyes of my experience and my expertise, and make it anti-inflammatory, gluten and dairy free, and make healthier Texas cooking. But also where it's accessible and still delicious. So that's where I thought I was heading, but way leads on to way, and I got fascinated with your self-publishing class, and I discovered that, wait a minute, my brother is a professional photographer and he's really good.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends is like an amazing graphic designer, and she does, like, she puts together magazines, she does the layouts for all these things, so she has these skills. So I'm like, wait a minute, and I know how to cook food, I know how to do all these recipes. So I asked them, would y'all want to come together on a project and see what we can do? And they said, great, let's do it.
Yeah.
So I learned so much about the publishing industry, and so much about about just recipe writing, and also it was wonderful because coming from working and owning a clinic I worked by myself, and I did for about a year. I worked by myself and I did the cooking classes. I needed a project. I missed working with people and doing collaborating, and this was a wonderful opportunity to do that. Yeah. So it was happiness.
Yeah. I think there is, in an entrepreneurial journey, there is time freedom for sure. I think that's one of the greatest benefits I feel in my own life. But you're right. You are spending a lot of time maybe by yourself. And your way of using a self-publishing project is a great way to gather your professionals that you knew and work together to photograph, write and design and lay out the cookbook and publish it. How do you feel about this one being before the book that you originally thought you were going to write?
Well, I'm used to plans not going the way that I always thought. And so I'm a grown up, and I've been in business for long enough to know that what is my definition of success? And my definition of success wasn't to have a Texas cookbook, that was, flying off the shelves. My definition of success was, can I pivot from this career that I've had, and how do I make my way in it, and how can I learn the most and have satisfaction and still have the freedom and things in my life that I want, to be able to be with my family when I need to and things like that. And this project allowed for that. So in those respects, it meets my definition of success.
Yeah, 100%. I bet your routines had to change, though. Like the things that you were doing on a day-to-day basis when you owned a private practice have to be different than the kinds of things you're engaging in now. Why don't you talk to people that are listening a little bit about if there's someone listening that's maybe wanting to make this kind of change, or they're thinking about maybe in retirement, writing a book or putting a book together, or they want to do something for their family, or they want to try to get traditionally published. What routines and things have you found are really helpful to keep your momentum going in, I call it kind of like the long game of cookbook writing and publishing?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There has been two, I think game changers for me. One is finding a coach. So I don't think this book would still be in my head, and I would be baking bread for my neighbors and my friends if I hadn't decided to start doing coaching and to get it on an organized path where I had consistent accountability.
Yeah. And I want to say that for you to say that, I think that's an area and something for everybody to think about in any area of your life. If you are wanting to start, running, or you have a half marathon in mind, or people find groups, they find people who know what it takes to be a runner, and they learn from them. And could be the same if you probably could coach people in starting private nutrition practices because you've been there, you know what to do. So I always encourage people, if you're thinking about finding a coach for something, to find someone that's been where you want to go and see if they're teaching about it. Because I do think it's a wonderful way to learn. I've learned a lot about what I've learned in business from my coaches that I've had, and plus you get to talk to people. You get to talk to humans, and it's fun. I mean, it's really fun to work with people like you. So I 100% agree that no matter what you're doing, a coach is always beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that has really helped for me, so the coaching and reading and writing. So just reading everything, just treating it like I did, during school. Since the 90s, I've loved nutrition and the science of nutrition, and I've always stayed in that, in either a continuing education or reading extra thing or reading studies. And so why wouldn't cookbook writing and learning how to be a writer, it was just a natural thing for me just to transition that. And so I've been reading on how to write.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and then how do you know when it's time to learning and consuming information? What's your sweet spot for that versus like actually getting into the doing of it, the action part of a habit of writing, or building your skills of writing, or being sure that you're consistently writing? What kinds of things did you do on that side?
I do morning pages, which is just, I have a little spiral notebook. I like yellow. All my spiral notebooks are yellow.
That's interesting.
I don't know why. But
So
I
all of them
that,
have the same color cover. Interesting.
yes, all of them are yellow.
I ordered the 6-pack, and there's like purple, green, red, black, white. Now I do have like my black ones I always use here at my desk for notes from like what we're doing today, if I need to do some thinking on paper for my business. But the green, the purple, the blue, and the red, I kind of do it based on the season. Like if it's Christmas, I got to use the green or red one. Or if it's wintertime, there's a white one. That's kind of like the snow. So that's kind of fascinating to hear that you love to use the yellow one all the time. What a great idea.
Yeah. I don't know. It makes me want to pick it. Even my phone case is yellow.
Yeah.
I have a thing for yellow.
Yeah.
So I do my morning pages, and I found that the key for me was to commit to the behavior, but be flexible on its parameters. Because if the morning pages, I usually recommend like do 3 pages, three pages. But there are times where I cannot do 3 pages. And I had to decide what is, what's the definition of success with this? That's a big thing for me. And it's if I understood what I wanted to gain from the behavior, and for me it was a check-in and to see what's going on internally. What story can I tell? What dialogue can I have come out of my brain and out of my hand? And if that was just, 5 sentences and I got distracted or it was dried up, then that's what it needed to be for that day. But so I've tried not to apply too much pressure, because I found out that when I started, I wanted to apply a lot of pressure to it.
Yeah.
And that did not help.
Yeah.
That made me want to stay away for a day or two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So creating flexibility was how that helped my brain.
Wonderful. What else? Any other kind of habits or routines that you found really helped you as a cookbook writer?
I have an intern, a dietetic intern, and that's been amazing for me. She's wonderful. I think I'm going to be not having an intern. She's just graduated college, and she's actually about to start. I'll have her for the summer, and then she will be moving out of state to complete her master's and dietetic internship. So she will be a dietitian. So maybe in 2 years she'll come back and want to write cookbooks with me. I don't know.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
That's been awesome, because that's like someone I know she's benefiting from the process, and she's been along for the ride, even with my private practice. And so she's been along this whole process of change, and helping me with my cookbook writing, like creating a process of, I like to write my recipes. If I'm just in the kitchen, I'll write a recipe down, but I'll use like this thing called Rocketbook.
Mm.
And then I can digitally send it to her and she can type it up.
Nice.
And so she's been in a different city for me for 4 years, but we've still been working together.
Yeah.
And
That's
so that makes it
a great idea
easy
to use Rocketbook.
Yeah. So far I've liked that, and it's streamlined the process. If you know where things are, where you're putting things, like where you're saving things, I got ours a little bit complicated because there's the different storage things like Dropbox and iCloud and Google Drive. So she wanted to use Google Drive, and that's what she had access to. And so I wanted to learn all the things. And then in the process of writing the cookbook, I've had to consolidate and move things to Scrivener, which is another place.
Yeah, because Scrivener is a piece of software for writing books. But of course, you're right. The file organization in Dropbox or iCloud or Google Drive is hugely important. But you all hit the nail on the head that you've got to just like pick one and kind of stick with that system.
Yeah. So we eventually did, and I think that's where I use the tools for my private practice is, we had a period of time of, okay, let's see what's going to work. Let's try a couple of little things. Let's put them on kind of experiment mode. And then we stop, we regroup, and we simplify, and we go with what's working.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's next for you in your business, your next couple of years? Where are you headed? You got more books in mind?
Well, yeah, I'm going to do, I'm launching the Gluten-Free Sourdough Cookbook.
Yeah.
And that's going well. I've learned that I'm keeping track of all the promoting that I do for that, because that way that will inform my proposal for my next book.
Yeah.
And my next book, I have the proposal pretty much written, but I'm going to revisit all of it. And my goal is to have it all revised and be submitting it by Labor Day of this year.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And that's going to be on Texas, anti-inflammatory Texas food.
Yeah, that's great. And your plan is to try to publish that yourself or use a traditional publisher?
My aim is to traditional publish.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that I love trying new things, and I think that I will love that process.
Yeah.
as much as this. And I don't think that this is the end of my self-publishing career, though.
Yeah. Because once you've learned the process, you really see that you create the interior for the book and the cover, and there are great options for getting it printed, uploaded, listed on Amazon. And it's really, technology's come a long way in terms of making that approachable and doable.
Yes. And it helps to have, a team. It helps to have, my brother's expertise. I relied on that. And then Ray knowing all the digital things. That's really been helpful.
Yeah. So you mentioned to keep learning, keep reading, keep writing. Any other advice you'd have for anyone who maybe they would, want to write a family cookbook, or they have a collection of recipes they want to publish?
I would say to advice would be not to get discouraged, because sometimes things aren't just there's going to be surprises. Like there's been some surprises with this, and you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's going to be some things that just didn't work out. I had my heart set on putting a strawberry muffin in this cookbook. I don't know why. I had this strawberry muffin in mind, and I could not make it work. I worked for weeks on a strawberry muffin, and so guess what? There's no strawberry muffin in the book because I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And there were times where I'm like, if I can't even do a simple strawberry muffin, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? And then you take a beat and you realize the book is not all about strawberry muffin. I have lots of wins.
Yes, you do.
So,
yep.
So don't get discouraged over the strawberry muffin.
Our brains are amazing, but why in the world does it like to focus on strawberry muffin situations? I mean, this conversation has been filled with lots of wins for you. And then we almost lit one thing, and it's not, it's not unique to just you, but it's what happens. We almost let one thing take us down. And it's just because our brains are wired to protect us. It thinks that something's gone terribly wrong if we can't get the strawberry muffin to work.
I know. No. But maybe this, I had been able to work a strawberry muffin that's pretty good without sourdough starter.
Yeah.
But it wasn't meant to be.
No, you wanted to stay true to your keeping a sourdough starter in everything, at least for this book. So it'll be in the book it's supposed to be in when the time comes. I'm confident about that.
Yes.
Yes, that's for sure. All right. Well, I think you love cookbooks, just like many people who are listening to this show. And that's what we talk about here. But let's talk a little bit about the role cookbooks have played in your life as a dietitian, as a mom, as just over the years. If you have any favorite cookbooks, what they might be.
I'm glad you asked me that, because this informs my Texas cookbook, which is what I thought I was heading, is because my mother had kept this binder. She put her label on it, Helen's Recipes.
Oh.
And so this is a binder of all her recipes, or not all, but a lot of her recipes.
Let me see the binder again. I'm sorry, people. Oh, that's so nice. Did she put that together?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Got all these little things.
Yeah.
She typed them all up.
Yeah.
And she was so funny. She would have extra copies in the little clear sleeve.
Oh.
So if you're like, oh, I want that, she could just pull you out an extra copy.
That's nice.
Yeah. So awesome. So that's been a huge inspiration. And so because I lost my mother 14 years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But through this, she's still with me, and I'm still finding, things like that.
Yeah. I think it's amazing that when we lose someone in our life that, meant a lot to us, to have their recipes or their handwriting, what they did in the kitchen, because food's such an emotional connection point. It's really a terrific thing. So I love that she, that's not a high-tech thing that she created. Obviously, she needed to type the recipes up she printed them out, and she printed enough copies to have extras in the holder in case somebody wanted it. But that takes time. I love to ask people about time. How did you find the time to do all this? I mean, I know that you have closed down your private practice, but you're not doing that anymore. But it would be easy to think, well, I don't really have time to work on this or cookbooks, or I don't want to take the time it's going to take to write a cookbook.
Yeah. Maggie, I'm a mood person. My mother-in-law has told me this. She goes, Kasey, you're a mood person. When you're in the mood for something, I can be extremely productive. But if I am not in the mood, like if I'm not in the mood to clean the kitchen, it could take me 4 times longer to clean the kitchen.
Yeah.
So I have learned I need to respect that and try and use that to my advantage. And also, I've identified some of the things that help cultivate that drive or that mood to want to be in the kitchen or to finish that part of the project. Like if it was editing.
Mm-hmm.
So after I got the book, I needed to really be in the zone for editing. And if I was at home, there's so many distractions. If I wasn't already in that mood of editing, so I figured out I've got a deadline, and having a deadline really helps. So I would try some things. I went over to Ray's house and I was like, I'm just going to sit on your kitchen table and I'm just going to do this. And that helped. Another time I found that I could get in that zone if I went to the coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
And so working with your strengths, and working with the weaknesses and trying making them a strength,
Mm-hmm.
I found those things have really helped guide the project and keep it moving forward.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love all those
and
tips.
Help me manage my time because, the editing needed to happen.
Yeah, it does need to happen. And giving yourself a deadline when you self-publish, I'm sure, was important because you'll get the deadline imposed on you in traditional publishing, but for self-publishing, and it's true for anything in business, entrepreneurs that are working solo, you have to have deadlines, and creating deadlines for yourself does help. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we got off the track of the cookbook. So we have your mother's cookbook. That's okay. I did that. I took a detour there on time because I'm always fascinated, like someone like your mom, taking the time to put something like that together for her family, how meaningful that is. And I just think that it's finite resource that we have a choice about how we spend. And it's amazing that she spent part of her life energy creating that book, and you now have it, and it's very special. So, all right. So we've got your mother's cookbook. What other cookbooks have influenced you?
So this one I brought it to. It's Darina Allen, Forgotten Skills of Cooking. I got this book in Ireland.
Oh yeah.
And it's a mammoth. It's got over 700 recipes.
Wow.
And it tells you how to prepare rabbit from the cage in your yard.
Like taking the fur off.
Yes. Even before that.
Yes, all of it.
And not that I've done that, but it's nice to have a book if I needed
if
to.
If you need to, yes.
And there's not a lot of things I can make that are gluten and dairy free in here. But what I love about it is I met Darina when I was at the cooking school that her mother-in-law started, and they love the art of cooking and the art of baking, and they love to teach people. And so this book reminds me of that. And I've got a keen eye. I've been out at a restaurant before, and I saw this like 20 feet away up on a shelf, like 15 feet up on a shelf, and I saw the spine. And I knew the color and I knew the writing.
You're like, that's
and I
it.
was like, how do they have this cookbook?
Yeah.
And so I ran over there and my husband was like, where are you going?
So I see a book I got to go get.
I know. And I was like, my hunch. I was like, I think that's a book I have. How do they have it? So then I got to meet all the people and they were like, yeah, that's a great book.
That's wonderful.
So
yeah. That's a bucket list item for me to go to her cooking school. I'm still operating. Ballymaloe is the name of it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They say Ballymaloo.
Ballymaloo.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
It looks like low to me.
Yeah. Very nice. All right. So I'll link to that in the show notes. Anything else?
I do have another cookbook that I love. It's the America's Test Kitchen Family Cookbook.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it because my husband got it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, I'll show it to you. Look, it's coming apart. Oh my gosh,
it is coming apart.
It's coming apart, but it's a 3-ring binder.
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't been able to find it again.
Huh.
And so I keep the whole book because I love that it has my turkey temperatures in there.
Yeah.
And like, you're like, how long is it going to take to thaw again?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me look that up.
Yeah.
And so that one comes out at least once a year, and that I don't pull out really very often anymore, but it really is what started like my cooking for my family, and not just my kids and my husband, but my extended family, my brothers and my parents and extended family. Because my home is the home that people come to now.
Wonderful.
And has been. And so that's been a good resource.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great. So I'll link to those in the show notes. I won't link to Kasey's mom's cookbook. And I think you might find it interesting when I start to talk. I ask this question of almost every one of my guests if they're willing to talk about it. And I hear so much about people's family cookbooks and memories of family cookbooks. And I think that really forms a foundation for those of us that write cookbooks, because they've always kind of probably been in some way, shape, or form like part of just what's around the house. People using recipes, people cooking. And I had someone say to me that, I think it might have been, I was writing an email and someone wrote back and said that they wished that they had grown up in a family that was the case, that people valued recipes and kept recipes, but she was determined to start doing that now. And so she was going to start the tradition. And I think it's a wonderful thing to do. And, the cookbook that Darina Allen wrote, America's Test Kitchen, and all the work that they do really does make a difference. And thank you so much for sharing those resources that you love.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
You're welcome. So what's the plan for promotion? Anything fun coming up to talk all about your book, The Gluten-Free Sourdough Cookbook?
Let's see. We're doing this. And then Friday, I'm on television.
Oh, that'll be fun.
And it's my first live television.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're doing, it's a television. I don't know how I came about it, but a channel in Colorado. Wonderful. I guess because it's a gluten-free sourdough. So I'll be live in Colorado on channel 21.
Wow, that's amazing. That's wonderful. And you're right. I mean, all these things that you're doing, you know how I am, always keeping track of what we do, and you'll have ideas that are just going to unfold that you maybe wouldn't have even thought of for promoting your next book. And that's all part of getting the word out there and people becoming interested in it. And gosh, you have so many neat things you can demonstrate and show people and talk about. I think you should be very proud of yourself and enjoy the time here promoting your beautiful new book, Gluten-Free, The Gluten-Free Sourdough Cookbook, gluten-free and dairy-free recipes for everyday baking. So thank you, Kasey.
Thanks, Maggie.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on the show, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. Again, all the links can be found in the show notes at www.cookbooklove.co. And if you are interested in writing a cookbook of your own, please check out the free cookbook writing masterclass called How to Get Paid to Write a Cookbook. It is designed specifically for food or nutrition experts, and you can check that out at www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/free. So that's it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. And until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.